Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, to all. And at the outset, my sincere thanks to the organizer of the event and the technical team, Mr. Ranjit and Paul. And perhaps I also thank my supervisor who has introduced me to the field of this indentured labor in Reunion Island. So I and Dr. Naren has decided to make a comparative study of indentured labor in Fiji and Reunion, and perhaps we make a compare contrast as to what extent, all the rules and regulations, and perhaps in the post-indentured period, what are the differences that we can actually make it out related to the problems of the settlement, and also related to the identity assertion, and perhaps how does the Indo-Fiji culture emerge, whereas in Reunion Island after 1946, they have been completely, assimilated under the Department of the Ultramar. So this is the best precise argument that we will carry forward. And for my part, let me begin with to what extent and when did indentured labor begin in Reunion Island? As we all know that from the English literatures, we have seen that indentured labor was designed by the colonial master to prolong the use of this labor when slavery was after the emancipation of slavery in 1824. Whereas in Reunion Island, if you looked at, so we often regard Saradigara, the Declaration 1848, as a landmark, but rather, if you closely observe all those archival records from 1826, and to be precise, 1828 was a time when you already have the indentured Indian labor working in Reunion Island, side by side with the Cafre, or what we call the African slaves. So, as a historian, as I've been telling, when you try and look at the issues, the genesis or the beginning is always important. Especially, it has given a very interesting pictures in Reunion Island as well. Primarily because this is the pioneer study, trying to teach you in English in terms of the Francophone, the French-speaking region. That is another interesting point. And when you closely looked at the engages or the indentured in Reunion Island, is a little more complex than what actually is about all indentured laborers in other parts of the world. The basic reason why I said, I have already mentioned that they have already engaged this labor side by side way back in 1826. And subsequently, as regards to the citizenship law of 1889, which mentions that a person who is born in the island is irrevocably Francais. At the same time, so those who are born in India and who have not been there as of 21 are not French, but nevertheless, when it comes in terms of the military conscriptions, either you're born in the Reunion Island or you're not born in Reunion Island, but nevertheless, everything is applied for all the indentured immigrants. This created a lot of complications. So in 1889, in the actual sense, after the signing of the Franco-British Convention, we have more than 42,000 indentured have already arrived in the post-Franco-British Convention. But nevertheless, the number of citizenship by that time was just 49. So there is one problem that we will try and sort it out as to what actually was the system in the indentured system in Reunion Island. As far as the indentured descendant and their settlement pattern and also the social life in Reunion Island is concerned, we also have a structure, systems of organizations where a lot of workforce is not necessarily by kith and kin or the family ties, but rather by the choice of the planters and the plantation masters. They call it Zohai, that means earless, primarily because they could not understand and hear what the indentured labor are actually saying, and that's the reason why they give the planters a name called Zohai. That is basically what they call the earless people. So in terms of the settlement, we have Satangdre, or called San Andre in English, and all the Sangpia and Kolimasion, Pitong Senliu, and all sets. These are some of the major clustered indentured immigrant settlements. And especially Sapangre is called Malabal lawn, primarily because the French India, the port of embarkation is on the Malabar coast, and whoever actually come from these places, either you are Tamil or the Malayali or whatever, it doesn't matter, but for them, they are all Malabar. Therefore, the term Malabar is a slang ascribed to the indentured laborer, and Sapangre is called Malabar lawns. And the second major settlement that we have is Sangpia, and then we have also Pitong Sandiu, and then Kolimasyong, and today we have a lot of what we call the historical, animated, and also perhaps some of the replica of the indentured laborers that we have in Reunion Island in Kolimasyong Botanical Garden. So that is the second thing that I would like to talk about. Regarding the restriction imposed on the cultural activities in Reunion Island, we have a lot of stories from the archival material where the consul, the British consul in Reunion Island, sending off on the report to the British India, because they were also equally responsible after the British India citizens were recruited for indentured labour from 1861 onwards. Then when a person is born, he has to be baptized, and then although the birth ceremony, everything has been consultation with the star and also all other astrology with the Indian tradition, but nevertheless, he has to be registered in the baptism register. And secondly, even the marriage has to take place both in the Indian tradition at the local level and also in the church. That was compulsorily done during the indentured period. And slowly and steadily, the emergence of temple is also very interesting in Reunion Island. For quite some time, a good number of indentured laborers used to put a small stone in their courtyard, which in the process they will start worshiping from there, and then later on that becomes some forms of temple. All right. So therefore, the point that I'm trying to make is that from baptism to marriage and also the establishment of temple, it's not one day or in a year or whatever, but rather it's a historical process that takes over a longer period of time, and that through struggle and so on and so forth. And perhaps after the island has come under the dome, the Port Modu Ultramare, and one of the credit to this revival of this Indian identity has to be given to the Club Tamil, which was founded in the mainland France under the leadership of Axel Krishnan, who is noble by now, and who had also become the mayor of Sangmari to challenge literally one of the right man hand of the person who was responsible for introducing the Port Modu Ultramare, that is Michel Debré. So Axel Krishnan made it a point that it was imperative on his part to introduce a lot of football clubs, a lot of literary clubs, basically, involving a lot of Indian community. And then the first instances of the revival of Indian identity, to which the credit be given to Club Tamil, was staged in terms of the translation of Myth Pirukulal et Pirukulal in French. And slowly and steadily, they made it a point that the culture of the Indians has been affected right from the beginning by involving them in the literary club, drama club, and the football club, which the initiative was taken by Dr. Axel Krishnan, who founded the Club Tamil. Secondly, with regard to the resistance, we have had a lot of resistance movement, which sometimes violently took place in some of the fields in Reunion Island, and sometimes out of frustration, some of the indentured laborers are said to have committed suicide, which we have seen from the archive material as well. And in one of the reports, when the council protested against this suicide, so the French, perhaps the French authority has given the assurance the British India government that the problem has been sorted out. Primarily, there is one tree in the middle of the farm where the Indian indentured laborer keep worshipping, putting a lot of clothes, puja, coloring the tree. In the process, that tree apparently poses an evil, and then that evil used to or attract the soul, and that eventually made the indentured laborer commit suicide. Therefore, we cut off the tree, we chop up the tree, and then there is no more suicide, and this problem was sorted out. And subsequently, we also have the indentured revolt in Satongre, which I have called as Malabalon at one point of time. Since those kind of violence actually doesn't have a place, and they have been dealt with equal measures of force, sometimes much later than much greater than what the indentured laborer resorted to. And having no solutions in the near futures, the indentured laborers finally made it a point that they do want non-violence demonstrations in 1912 in front of the British Council, representing all their grievances against the French planter. And since then, the French authority, who stopped beating drums on the pretext of noise pollutions and also different kind of that cultural practice, and all those issues has been slowly and relatively relaxed after this non-violence demonstration in 1912. And today, if you looked at the Deepavali celebration at one point of the all over the world, you have seen lighting crackers, you have seen bursting cracker, and a lot of lamps were put up. But let me remind you. So one interesting thing among the Indian indentured descendants, especially among the indentured descendants La Reunion, is the fact that Deepavali was at one point of time sometimes celebrated by long processions holding a lot of arms, and then this was one form of the the connections between tradition and modernity. I mean, the tradition during the indentured period, how they actually used to protest against the white man authority, who on the pretext of noise pollution banned beating drum, which was later on taken in terms of celebrating the Diwali with beating drums and holding Masar and Dao, and then in long process. So that is one important achievement after 1912. And off and on, we have seen that a lot of issues were involved, and the system of the indentured in Reunion Island was very peculiar in relations to other parts of the indentured in the Fiji and also Mauritius and elsewhere. Let me also narrate one instances. There is a ship called Marzol, M-A-R-Z-O-L-L-E, Marzol, which apparently brought more than 200 indentured laborers, but finding no more takers in Reunion Island, that ship has to be brought back to Mauritius. And in Mauritius, they were sold like vegetables, where a price tag was put on their forehead. And this kind of issue that actually doesn't happen, because in other countries there has to be demand and supply. For instance, if the planter demands this much of indentured laborer, then there has to be some requisition. So those kind of things were missing in Reunion Island, and all those agents and traders, out of whims and fancies, they used to bring, and then they used to bring, and literally finding no market has to be given back to the Mauritius. And the second instances that I would like to mention out of which is very peculiar to Reunion Island is like the correspondence. The correspondence, in fact, is a system of tying together all the defaulters of the indentured laborers from different areas, and then the stronger one in the front and the weaker one in the end. So they will make them walk from, say, from Sangpia to Sanglani. Sanglani is the capital for to produce them in front of the protectors, immigrants, and also the magistrate. In the process, they have become emaciated. Some even died on the process, which is never happened in many of the islands, might be Fiji or might be Mauritius or some other colonies as well. So this is also another peculiar features. All these things has become, subject to abuse when they introduce police gratuity. police brevity states that if X and Y said are friends, if they wanted to meet, and then if apparently X crossed the boundaries of the planters and then move into the Y farms, then eventually that fellow has to be caught. And the police, for one of these brevity, they have resorted to a lot of abuse in the system, and apparently they have been put under this what I call the correspondence, and eventually they have to be tried. And I will also read out one instances where we have the proceeding. One of the magistrates asked, did you really speak the truth? He said, yes. The magistrate said, no, you cannot speak the truth. You might be lying because you're Indian. So all this kind of abuse were present, at that very point of time. So in relation to the emergence of what we call the Indo-Fiji culture, over here, they have a very celebrated, but rather, the problem with Reunion Island is that after the introduction of DOM, Depan Modu Utrimi in 1946, then everyone is friends, because there are positive and negative side as well. Because on the positive note, everyone availed a French citizenship. They all got the education system, so on and so forth. But the negative aspect is that the idea of shame, as shame influence actually, happened among the Indian people. Everyone was same to call themselves as Indian, and then the only thing that they said was je suis français, that was I'm French man or I'm French lady. So that period of same influence happened till the advent of liberalization or globalizations. Another interesting story, during those period of same influence, the ambassador of Indian ambassador from Paris had come down, and he inquired to what are the requirements, the needs that Indian indentured labor actually need. So they have requested the ambassador to send them our history books that is related to Indian culture, and then the writings of Rabindranath Tagore, and also the one some other folklores like Le Tirukkural Tiruvallur and so on and so forth. So when the Indian ambassador went back, he sent two cartons of books related to Indian culture. Even that when it arrived at the port, the Indian indentured descendants were ashamed to pick up that books from the port, and eventually after the cyclone comes, so that has been washed offshore. The last and final point that I would like to make is that the history of Reunion Island is always dependent upon the Mauritian people, all right? Primarily because for them, since it's a Francophone country, to connect themselves directly to India is not possible. So Mauritius has become a mirror for them. So in order to ascertain whether this is Indian or not, then they have to ascertain from Mauritius. It's like someone who tried to go out of town right before you go for shopping or whatever. Then you looked at your face from the mirror. In the same way, when you wanted to come to India, then you first ascertain from Mauritius that what is this and what is that, and so on and so forth. So this has been admitted by a lot of Indian diaspora community and Reunion Island as well. For those of them who attend the PIO, the PIO's conference, Pravasi Bharat Divas. So sometimes they enter their name as Mauritius because they say that it is very difficult for them to make it understand where is Reunion Island. But when you said Mauritius, they immediately understood. So all this has become, some sorts of problem for them to connect themselves to the Indian. But nevertheless, now there's a lot of desire on the part of the Indian diaspora community. There is a full fanfare of cultural revival through the Tamil Sangam and also the ODI, Organized for Diaspora Initiative, which has been spearheaded by Professor Dubey from JNU and also the present president of the Reunion ODI in Reunion Island. So a lot of cultural activities and also academic interaction has been going on. And sometimes they argue, in terms of the Pravasiga, there has to be some cultural institution to be set up by Indian towards the Francophone countries. This is the aspirations of Indian diaspora community in Reunion Island. Thank you once again, and thank you everyone.